At Dave Cooper Live, we connect the industry leaders in the architectural, engineering, and construction space with the people, the products, and the processes to help them build it better. We've spent decades protecting the skull on job sites, but we've been missing the thing that actually matters most, the brain. Because here's the reality. Most traumatic brain injuries aren't caused by direct impact. They're caused by rotation, brain torque. And the hard hats we've trusted for years, they were never designed to solve for that. And let's be honest, half the time, they're not even worn. They're heavy, they trap heat, they wobble, and the guys take them off the second they can. Today's guest is here to challenge that entire system. David Visnack, CEO of Hardknock and Nuro, is rethinking safety from the ground up. Not just building a better helmet, but building one that's lightweight, breathable, and comfortable enough that workers actually want to wear it. Because the best safety equipment in the world doesn't matter if it stays in the truck. But before we get into any or all of this, we need to have a few words from our supporting members. Brought to you by Graitec, developers of the complete light gauge steel and wood framing software for Revit StrucSoft. Offsite, modular, or prefabricated, StrucSoft Framer turns Revit into a powerful manufacturing tool, automating every step of the DFMA process from design to final delivery. StrucSoft doesn't just work with Revit, it transforms it. Jumpstart your designs at StrucSoftSolutions.com. Hardknock Ltd. has a long history of innovation in cold form steel manufacturing and producing innovative precision roll forming technology for customers throughout the United States and the world. Check out their machine buyer's guide for offsite modular construction or fast build construction with light steel for framing. Go to their website, HardknockLtd.com. When the delivery can't fail, standard transportation isn't enough. Oversized, time-critical, high-risk, specialized transportation supports advanced projects nationwide. From data centers to the delivery and set of homes and offices. With more than 60 years of experience, we've transported over 60,000 projects, served more than 200 U.S. cities, and logged over 70 million miles. When failure isn't an option, choose the leader in specialized transportation. All right, again, thank you to all of our supporting members and all of the supporting members that you see going across the bottom in the ticker there. We can't do any or all of this without all of your support out there. This is unfiltered, unedited, an invitation only, not a pay to play. So we're happy to have all of you on board. Hey, and if you want to be a guest on the Dave Cooper Live Show, pull out your phone, open that camera, and take a snapshot of this QR code right up here. And that'll take you to a page where you can sign up, or you could recommend somebody to be a guest on the Dave Cooper Live show, we'd love to have you on. All right. So without further ado, let's get into the conversation with our good friend, David Visnack. Hey, David, how are you today?
Great. Yeah. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, this is great. Great to have you guys on the show. Years ago, we met up and you guys sent me one of my very own hard hat helmets, right? I love it. You didn't pay me to wear it. You didn't tell me to wear it, but this thing everybody loves. And I've given a few away, because you sent me quite a few when I was out there. So I'm super excited to finally have you on the show and kind of talk about the Hardknock, helmet and everything that you guys are doing. But David, before we get into the show, we want to know everything about you from the moment you were born to this very moment in time. Do not leave out any of the good stuff from the hospital. Or you know what? I'm actually going to have your daughter on the show, and I know she has the guts. She'll throw you under the bus, and we'll have some fun with it. So don't leave anything out. You only got 2 minutes to do it. The floor is yours.
Yeah, well, I grew up in Colorado. I had the opportunity to go outside a lot, camping and fishing. Later in life, went to school, probably spent too much time camping and fishing and skiing, but, got it done. And then I got into the outdoor industry, worked for some companies like Smartwool, fly fishing companies like Sage, worked for Buck Knives, and then eventually Hydro Flask. So I've always done things outside. My family does stuff outside, and that's our passion. And, came to a wave cell because I loved what they were doing and from a safety point of view and what that meant to cyclists and to skiers. But yeah, always been an outdoor guy. Love it and can't get enough of it.
Yeah, no, that is amazing. And you know what? I know you're a cyclist and I hope you're okay with it, but we were talking about your daughter and at the level she is cycling and mountain biking, head injuries are a real thing, and I think the cycling community actually puts more time and effort into protection than the construction industry. Is that where kind of some of this thought process, bloomed into, Wave Cell and Hardknock and Nuro?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously you always want to wear a helmet when you're biking. And when my daughter started racing at a young age, we would go out and buy the most expensive helmet. And, I learned a little bit about helmets. And then actually I connected through friends, the folks that were developing Wavestone. At that time, it was just a prototype. And they showed me the data. And they basically educated me on the state of cycling helmets, which is pretty similar to other helmets in that they're great for impact, but there hadn't been much traction as far as preventing traumatic brain injuries. And as you may know, like most of the brain injuries that happen while wearing a helmet, like you don't fracture your skull, but you can still get a brain injury. And so with my daughter cycling, she's fallen quite a few times. She's worn Wave Cell. She's never had a concussion while she's wearing Wave Cell, although every fall is different. She's had other helmets that were issued to her, so she didn't have a choice, and she's definitely had some concussions. So we're pretty intimate with head injuries, hitting the ground, and the outcomes. So that was one of the big draws to Wave Cell.
So I want to just make sure people understand. Your daughter is not just cycling. I'm going to put it back up here. That's USA across her shirt. I mean, she's cycling at a very high competitive level. And my guess is 40 miles down, 40 miles an hour down a hill and wrecking and taking your head off a tree has a big impact.
Yes, it does. And as you can tell by the outfit, she's wearing spandex, which is not exactly the most, it's aerodynamic and it's light, but it's not going to protect you from fall. That helmet is the only form of protection when you're doing, cross country mountain bike racing. Yeah, she was on the U.S. national team U23 and has competed in some World Cups and definitely at the national level. So she's had her fair share of hits. Yeah.
Well, construction is a dangerous place to begin as well, right? Things falling off buildings, people slipping and falling, hitting their heads. I mean, there's so many different ways things can go awry. Tell us a little bit about, Hardknock and what has been the problem and what problem are you solving? I mean, have we been getting this wrong?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think first you have to look at the environment. We look at sports like football and cycling, and that danger is apparent. And you see a wreck while you're watching, mountain biking, you see a hit while you're watching football. It's like that is obvious. And the reasons for it are obvious. Mm-hmm. I think the piece with construction that's, particularly dangerous is that it's just the time exposure you have in an environment, right? You're not you're not going there for one day. You're in there 5 days a week.
Yeah.
It's an environment that, you got stuff laying around, you got things that are moving. So the opportunity for a head injury in this environment is quite high. The standards for type 1 and type 2 do a really good job of protecting for impact and skull fractures. But unfortunately, the majority of TPIs that people receive aren't consistent with having a skull fracture. So you can have a hat on or a helmet and take a hit and absorb that energy and not fracture your skull and definitely have a traumatic brain injury. So that's where I think the standards haven't caught up, and there's definitely discussions of how do we get rotational impact. We call it brain torque because that's probably the easiest way to understand into the standards, and that's where WaveCell comes into place originally, and now Nuro and Hardknock.
Well, that's what's interesting, right? So the industry standard just says we have to be able to absorb top impact and side impact, correct?
Correct.
And those are the two level of helmets that they make, right? Some helmets aren't even made for side impact or what have you. So, but that's just protecting the skull, the actual bones of the head, which is there to protect the brain, but that's not what's really causing the issue, right? I mean, my kids play hockey. They've had concussions. Their skull's not cracked, but they have a concussion.
Yeah, and it's not unique just to construction. The cycling industry, the snow industry, most of the helmet standards out in the world do not address rotational impact or brain torque. Some of the industries or the spaces are starting to advance that. Equestrian is probably going to have the best standards coming out here in the next couple of years. But yeah, it's not just construction. I think it's based in not really understanding how TBIs are created. And there is this kind of old school belief that when you hit your head, your brain bounces off the inside of your skull. That is not the case. Your brain is in the sealed hydraulic system. And we have videos that, kind of demonstrate that. But really what happens is the head spins because you take an oblique blow. It spins at 2 to 5 milliseconds. And then the head moves and then the brain catches up, and that creates shearing of neurons and tissue. And so what Nuro does, originally WaveCell, is it acts like a slip clutch. It absorbs that twist so that you don't have that quick shearing of brain tissue. And there really isn't a standard that addresses that in helmets yet to say, hey, all helmets should have that.
So the interesting part is you're not just doing the helmets. You actually have a whole neuro research lab. I believe, if I read right, 2020, or was it earlier than that you formed this the Neuro lab?
Yeah, it's actually an offshoot of another lab that the two founders, Steve Mady and Dr. Botlang, was a doctorate in biomedical engineering, and Steve is a practicing orthopedic surgeon. They've had numerous biomedical patents. So the launch of originally WaveCell and then Nuro was a grant from the National Institute of Health to solve this problem. As a surgeon, Steve Mady saw that there was a lot he could do as an orthopedic surgeon to repair people. But the one thing that always, was an issue that you couldn't really solve post-injury was traumatic brain injury. And traumatic brain injury is this thing that really changes and shapes everyone's, life, usually not in a great way because it's your brain, it's your consciousness, it's everything. And you only have one brain, and you really can't go in there and repair the brain. So what Steve came to the conclusion pretty quickly was you're going to have to develop a technology that is preventative. Since there is no post-injury thing that you can do from an operation point of view. And that was born through the grant from the National Institute of Health to create a solution that would help prevent brain injuries. And that's one of the big differences between our technology and the other technologies is this is a technology that was born out of the medical field. It's not taking existing materials and repositioning them into a helmet. It was born out of the medical field for the specific purpose of reducing the probability of traumatic brain injury.
So where was this being used at before in the medical field? Prior to you guys putting the tech, it wasn't being used.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. We tested all sorts of materials, off-the-shelf materials, to see if there was a solution that we could simply put into a helmet and have the outcome. And that's part of that research with the grant from the National Institute of Health is like, is there something that already addresses this? And so we create our own lab to test helmets. We created tests to evaluate rotational impact. And then we went through just a catalog of material that was off the shelf, honeycomb structures, all different types of material. And we could not find a material that would absorb and basically act like a slip clutch as far as slipping and then also crumpling over on itself. Because in order to reduce that concussion, you have to be able to absorb the energy, and you also need to be able to shear that rotational impact. And so, as you see in that diagram, you have a material that's doing three different things all at once. We had to create the material because we couldn't find the material.
Right. So you created the material, which is, well, it's not waffle, but it's almost like this really cool, well, you can see it there, like a zigzag design within the helmet. So what you're saying is the old hard helmets, they usually had a piece of styrofoam in it, or they just had a piece of mesh that, had a little cap on top, and you'd have to adjust that mesh, right? And they're uncomfortable, and you end up with these strap marks across your head and everything else. This is actually an entire system from the shell all the way through, it looks like, to that, protective layer. And that protective layer is actually what sits on the head with some padding in between.
A little bit of padding because it's, we call it comfort pad, because that comfort pad, you don't want to have plastic right on your head just because it's not, you want a little squish, a little bit of fuzz to absorb moisture, like any hat. Like if you have a baseball cap, there's a little brim there that absorbs moisture, nice little soft stuff. Right. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Right behind that is this material that was designed specifically for a helmet and designed specifically to mitigate concussions. And that's what's truly unique about the Nuro core is this is not a material that was repurposed for the end game of helmets. It is a material that was designed specifically for helmets. And so part of that is, if it's specific for a helmet, it has to address brain injury, right? That's a given. It has to be very breathable because you don't want to have your head, hot. And you want a material that's going to cover the entire contact point. And that's a piece that's very different about our product is if you take that comfort pad out on just about any helmet out there, other than our helmet, you're going to see like a variety of different materials. But if you look at the inside of a Hardknock helmet, that material you'll see wraps into a perfect dome and provides protection from every angle. And that protection is all the same. So when you hit this helmet from different angles, you're going to get the same thickness of the Nuro core. The cells are oriented in the same way. There's really no other material that does that. There's a scientific term for it called a negative Poisson ratio. So it's basically a material that you can stretch into a perfect dome and it's continuous. There's no ripples in it. There's no like crimps. It doesn't fold over. You don't have to like do weird cuts to make it, get into that shape. And that is part of the comfort when people put on our helmets, like, wow, this is really comfortable. It's just that continuous, contact. There's no irregularity. EPS foam, as an example, that's what's used most of the time. EPS is fantastic. I mean, no doubt about it. It's hard to beat the weight and the energy absorption, but EPS inherently does not mitigate concussion. It just absorbs lateral impacts. The other thing too about EPS, and I learned this back in my days of running product development at Hydro Flask, it's one of the great insulators in the world. Vacuum insulation is the best insulator. Aerogel is a great insulator, which was developed on the space shuttle. And then it's EPS foam. So if you look in the caps of most water bottles, there's an EPS puck there. If you look at most coolers, cheap coolers, they're just made out of EPS foam. If you cut up, a really nice cooler, inside is EPS foam. There's not a better, there's very few materials in the world that insulate better. And then you put that on your head. And then you look at a construction helmet. It's not like a bike helmet. Bike helmet has big vents. Construction helmets can't have big vents because you're in an environment where you've got debris and, things that could be an issue with those big vents. So then you have the perfect recipe for this helmet that keeps your head really, really hot. And then you get into summer conditions and that's a problem. So one of the things that we found with our material is that it's 93% porous and it absorbs without all that EPS. And so you have a helmet that's very comfortable when it comes to heat issues.
Yeah. Hey, listen, and I'll vouch for that. Like I said, I have one right here. Look, I have the old the green color in there, which probably shows up pretty good on screen there for people to see. Um, it is so well vented. And for those of you out there watching that have seen me travel around the world on location at job sites, on high rises, this is actually the helmet that I wear every time. And they try always give me a helmet on site. A lot of the bigger companies have their own, you got to wear their PPE. And everybody asks me about this helmet every time I'm there. And I tell you what, it is one of my favorite to wear for that reason, because it doesn't sweat. And as much as all of you out there think I don't sweat when I'm on camera, I'm calm up here, but I'm a duck underwater. My little legs are paddling, trying to go where we need to go in the conversation. So I love that. How long has the product been on the market now, David?
The product in the form of the liner, it was introduced with Trek bikes back in 2019. It got in 2020. It received Invention of the Year in the top 20 inventions of 2020.
Oh, wow.
In
you were on
Virginia,
Time Magazine too, weren't you?
Personally, me, no.
Well, the brand was, right?
Yeah, the brand was, yeah. Just to be clear.
Yeah, sure. Well, sure.
Yeah, sure.
You are the brand. Come on, let's go.
Exactly. Yeah, it was on the cover, and because it's profound invention, because you're looking at something that has a degree of TBI mitigation, concussion mitigation that's
right.
We believe unparalleled. And Trek, credits that launch as probably their most successful single product launch in the history of the company. It's actually, when you go to Trek, there is a wall there where there's a graphic that basically says, make your wave cell moment. So it's brand defining for Trek in that they were able to bring a level of safety to the industry and a problem with the industry that, obviously has been an issue for a long time. So 2019, the material showed up in construction helmets. You're looking at 2022. We decided to launch our own construction helmet brand, which was WaveCell. It's the same name at that time. And because we saw the issue, and the issue is definitely in sport. But if you look at a way to go out and bring benefit to the greatest number of people when it comes to TBI and our solution, construction's obvious. I mean, there's more people that wear construction helmets than any sport. And you have guys and gals that are in it every day. So that was our motivation to get into the construction space. Like, hey, we have a great solution. We got a grant from the National Institute of Health. Where can this be the best impact in the world? No pun intended, to help people. And it's obvious it's construction.
Yeah, I mean, do you have any statistics like in construction? How many TBIs a year? Nationally, globally? I mean, it's I know it's a lot, because I mean the injury rate in construction is way higher probably than cycling.
Yeah, no, it's as a percentage. I don't have any off the top of my head. I don't want to misquote it, because we have had the quotes before, but you look at construction helmet sales and you're like in the hundreds of millions every year. And knowing that the vast majority of those do not address TBI. So, that's where our main concern is, like, how do we get this technology out there just based off the volume of helmets that go out into the world?
Yeah, for sure. So let's kind of get into, TBI, construction, liability, right? Nobody really thinks of safety until there's a safety issue somewhere, right? Or something happens. That's when new policies tend to get implemented, which is a shame. But head injuries or traumatic brain injuries, TBI. I mean, it comes from explosions as much as falls and everything else. From an insurance perspective, a liability perspective of a company, how big is this? How big is safety for companies in their workforce and their team?
Yeah, I mean, obviously with Type 2 being implemented, it's companies are realizing, insurance companies are realizing it's a much bigger issue than maybe they had considered before. From a cost point of view, as far as injuries, so the average foot injury is somewhere around $20K. As far as treatment, the average hand injury, $15K to $30K. The average brain injury for a worker well exceeds the 1.5 million to 1.8. Some of that cost of that injury is in obvious, you go to the hospital, and there's that issue. But then there's the long term of it, as far as recovery and counseling, because once again, this is your brain, and the impact to your family, the impact to the workforce. So yeah, the estimates are at 1.8 million. Interestingly, the cost of the PPE is completely inverse to the cost of the injury treatment. Most companies have zero issues spending $200 a year on boots, and that's a $20K injury. $100 a year in gloves. You go through this pretty quickly. That's a $15K injury. And traditionally, companies have been looking at $40 Type 1 helmets against the backdrop of a $1.8 million injury. And we have a saying at Hardknock is, do we really have $200 feet and $40 brains? And so definitely the industry is figuring it out pretty quickly. And I think Type 2 is great, right? Because you have to have helmets that have side impact. We're just hoping that more people realize that you haven't gone far enough. You haven't solved where the bulk of TBIs have happened, and that's through rotational impact, which we call brain torque.
So this is interesting, right? So part of the problem is how do we get the hard helmets and the safety PPE gear to function in a way that it truly protects. But I think the harder part is, how do you design and build something that people will actually wear and wear when nobody's looking, right? That's kind of the harder thing. Talk to us a little bit. I mean, you have the design of the helmet, but I'm sure you've done a lot of research, and I can vouch for it, but I don't want this to feel like a sales pitch from my end, right? Comfort is a big deal, because at least on my job sites, I remember as soon as you can take off those hard helmets, you're taking them off, especially if it's a hot day. Talk to me a little bit about what you guys think about when you're putting in the comfort to your design as well. Yeah,
no, you nailed it. It is about comfort. And, the first thing we look at is just ergonomics. And this goes back to, our roots are biomedical engineering. Our company, we don't have an industrial designer on staff. We have, 4 or 5 engineers, and their background is in biomedical engineering.
Right.
Turns out biomedical engineers know how to make things that fit pretty well. And so our headband, our fit system, the way the helmet is balanced, that's not, Johnny Jr. product intern in there. Those are biomedical engineers. So that is intentional, because we know that if someone's going to be protected, they have to wear the helmet, right? If it's uncomfortable or it has weird balance, then they're not going to wear it. And as soon as you don't wear a helmet, it doesn't matter if it's Type 1 or Type 2, or you have no protection. So that's pretty essential. And going back to the heat and the breathability, if you design a helmet that is really hot, you're not going to want to wear it. You're going to want to take that thing off as soon as you can. And sometimes you're going to take it off before you get into an environment that's not construction and it's not safe. And that's the number one complaint with workers that are coming from Type 1 to Type 2, because Type 1 just has as you mentioned before, a webbing system, and those actually breathe reasonably well because it's just air, right? It's just a suspension. If you look at the vast majority of Type 2s, they are built, their impact system is based out of EPS foam. Once again, EPS foam is an incredible insulator. You really can't do better than EPS foam.
Right.
And then you have it in a helmet that has very, very little ventilation, and it's not a helmet that's moving through the air like a bike helmet. And so we designed the helmet, obviously, with the Nuro core, which is the most porous system that we know of. And then because of the way we design the system, we can put ventilation into the shell in a way that most competitors can't. So this is a great example. I can show you. This is a helmet that's under design right now, but this is a full brim. But if you look at the amount of ventilation, so you're looking in at a helmet that you're looking right in on a 93% porous impact system. That helmet, along with the vents on top and on the front, an incredible amount of ventilation, and that's key for comfort.
Yeah.
And then the last piece I would say, and I don't think most people that work on the job site are going to say, I look cool in this helmet, but there is an aesthetic to this thing, and I would say we've gone pretty deep looking at what construction workers want, and there's a lot of helmets out there that just look like white bobblehead kind of like
Oh yeah.
Spaceballs. I don't know if you remember the movie with Mel Brooks. It was Spaceballs, and you have the big
Oh yeah.
goofy looking helmet. They don't want some goofy looking white helmet. They want contrast. They want, cool color blocking. I mean, these helmets, construction helmets, should be as cool as sport helmets. And so when you look at, modern helmet, like it should look kind of cool, I think
It does look cool.
Yeah. I mean, that's the piece too. It's like, you gotta bring the zhuzh, you gotta bring the bling, and in a constructive way. So that's the last piece we look at our helmets is like, is that something you'd want to be seen in? And that's a big piece of it too. If guys are like, yeah, this thing looks pretty awesome, and gals are like, yeah, this thing fits well. Like I don't look dorky.
Right.
That's another reason to keep it on. If you look dumb, if you think you look dumb, you don't want to keep it on. So
Yeah.
Fit, ergonomics, airflow, and it's got to look good.
Well, you know what, that's it too. And with our generation aging out and the newer generation coming in, young people think more about, what they look like, especially before marriage and all of that, right? Because
Exactly,
you're always out to impress, or whatever partners or whatever you have out there. But the other side of it is, why can't it function the way it's supposed to function and look good? And that's what I hear you saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look at other helmets. Like football helmets used to be one kind of flavor design. They were kind of bobbleheady. Football helmets now, if you look at them, or hockey helmets, they look kind of badass. And so
They
a
do.
construction helmet should look pretty badass, because this is a sport. The only difference is you go in there and you're doing it every day.
That's right. And I'm looking on the site here. I mean, it's not just the helmet. I mean, you got all the accessories, and I saw them in the pictures as well, as far as screen masks. And it doesn't matter to the industry, right? I mean, you got light attachments on there, extra brim visors, it looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you just want to make sure that you're covering all the bases as far as the fit and ergonomics. We have universal fitting for it, so you can use a variety of different accessories. But obviously, we wanted to make accessories that were like down to the last to make it fit perfect.
Right. David, what haven't I asked you? What am I missing in this conversation? Anything?
I think the main topic here, once again, is it's about like what are helmets here to do, and what's the real problem, and we go back to like, we're definitely there's a lot of people that make a great helmet. I mean, to be clear, there's a lot of helmets out there that'll pass type 2. I think the piece that we look at, and I think the big question is like, are you protecting the skull, or are you protecting the skull and the brain? We're here to protect the brain, and we come from a medical background. Like I said, this thing was born from a grant from the National Institute of Health. That's what we're about. We're about solving this problem, where if you have a traumatic brain injury, it's life altering. You only have one brain. So if you get an injury to that brain, it affects you, it affects your family. It most definitely, affects your, how you come to work and as a company providing PPE for employees. This is the biggest area as far as protection you can give them, because once again, if you have a brain injury, the cost of that, and then the impact of the workforce, and more importantly, the impact to that individual's life over the long term is so massive that this is the area that we want to see addressed more than anything.
Yeah. And you know what? I think if you're a developer, a general contractor, an owner of a development company, or even in the insurance side of this, right? It's not the initial impact, it's the lifelong effects or months of recovery that comes from this, what ultimately comes out of whoever owns that company or the insurance company's pocket, right? So it's not just about a $40 helmet, right? I think anytime somebody gets hit in the head, they would all say, man, I wish I had that other helmet, right? Because you don't know. It's too late once it happens. And I think that's the big thing. So if you're out there thinking about upgrading your safety helmets, you guys are the only ones on the market with this technology that
Absolutely.
I've seen.
Yeah, no, we are the only ones. And, going back to, how we created the part of that creation, it never existed before. We make the material ourselves.
Right.
It starts with biomedical grade plastic. We have a proprietary folding process where it gets into the structure. The machines we made ourselves. This is not some off-the-shelf thing, because an off-the-shelf solution just doesn't give you what you need to provide the protection that is required. So,
right, 100%. David, is there anything you want to leave us with before we wrap up here?
Yeah, I mean, once again, I think the main thing I want to leave you with is just how important this issue is. I mean, it's as far as protecting the worker, we clearly don't see a bigger issue out there. Once again, type 1 and type 2 are great as far as protecting the skull, and type 2 is definitely a major improvement for the industry. But the main thing, I would leave viewers with, and especially with buyers, is making sure that you have a helmet that you feel comfortable is going to protect your brain and impact, because most injuries to the brain, TBI, on workplaces happen with simple slip, trips, and falls. So, the environment, you definitely need something that's going to protect you from that type of thing.
Yeah, and we need something that people will wear, because your helmet and everybody else's helmet does no good unless people are actually wearing them. And I think that's the main takeaway for some of this. So, I mean, David, this was a fantastic conversation. I really do appreciate you finally coming on after 3 years. That's all right, but we got you. And I think what makes, this story so important is it's not just about hard hats and right. It's about protecting people, reducing long-term injuries, and designing equipment that workers are actually going to wear. And if all the protection companies out there would think that way, I think we'd have a lot more healthy construction workers out there. And guess what? Your premiums on your insurance would probably be lower too.
Yeah.
You agree with all that, I bet.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting having conversations with the insurance companies over the last couple of years. I mean, they see it. Once again, that's from a cost point of view, it's the greatest liability to insuring companies. So yeah, it's interesting every year, the conversations and inquiries we get from the insurance industry, which is obviously a very big industry.
Oh, it is. Well, and the insurance is really what runs our industry, in my humble opinion.
Yeah.
All right, David, with that said, thank you so much for joining us today. And for those of you that want to learn more, we've had the websites going across there, hardknock.com. If you're into the data and the science behind all this, go to neuroprotection.com. And on top of that, if you want to buy some of these amazing helmets, right across the bottom, was that TPR Industrial? Well, that went off.
TPR Industrial. Yep.
Yeah. BDGsafety.com and whitecap.com. So these helmets are out there and they are available for you. David, I'll come right back to you after the show here. Thank you again. All right. For the rest of you that are out there, we'd love to have you join us here on Dave Cooper Live. Where's it at? Let me put it up there. Right there. Make sure you subscribe to our channels, right? And if you want to be a guest on the show, or you want to actually refer somebody that you think should be a guest on this show, take your phone out, take a picture of that QR code and sign up. We'd love to hear from you. And as always, thank you to all of our supporting members. We can't do any of this without all of your support out there. So with that said, that's a wrap, everybody. Thank you for watching. I'm Dave Cooper, and we'll see you next week. Bye now. What an amazing show. Thank you to all of our sponsors for helping us to continue to bring all of these innovative conversations to all of you out there. Please visit them, see what they have to offer you. And as always, subscribe to the YouTube channel and ring that bell. It would mean the world to us. I'm Dave Cooper. Thanks for watching.